Greetings. I hope you decide to watch this webinar because I was going to cover some more design principles for responsive design and give you a little demonstration again. Let's get started here. Boy, I can't believe we're already at the end of the semester, and so far the comps that I've seen are fabulous. You all have some really good ideas for your final website, and I really look forward to seeing them and having those websites shared with the rest of the class so we can have some dialogue about it during finals week. And I hope you got the announcement message from this week indicating that there will be no final exam. I've always had one in the past 8 years, but I think there's a lot of work going into these final projects, and we can wrap up the semester and probably get a better learning opportunity and better outcomes for all of you if we're able to discuss some of the design ideas that you integrated into your project during Flex Week. And it also takes the pressure off of those of you that are taking multiple classes. So I do appreciate all the time that you're putting into your project, and I look forward to seeing them. So let's get started about mobile. I mentioned in my announcement for the week that there was a very cool video on Vimeo that's listed on the Module 13 webpage. And if you get a chance to watch it, I encourage you to do so. I don't think it's more than 14 minutes or whatever, but it's entertaining. The speaker is funny. He's very real in terms of talking about the workflow for responsive design and starting from the ground up, or what I call start small, and designing for your smaller devices, smartphones, and then working up to a tablet design, and the tablet design will resemble the desktop design. And the whole idea of starting with mobile is because the research indicates that most people are going to be accessing websites for the very first time on mobile devices, oftentimes from an app, perhaps a purchasing app or an entertainment app that they've installed on their device, and it takes them to the website, for the optimized website, for more information. And that's where you really need to think smart about, think smart before you start, because that's where you're going to hook in the viewer or the user and entice them with just enough information that they want to go to the full site. And how many of you have done that, where you've looked at a mobile site or you've looked at a mobile app and thought, gee, I really like their products. I'd like to see what else they have and what the details are. And you end up going home and going on your desktop computer or checking it out on a friend's desktop computer and realizing that there's a lot of really useful stuff there. And then voila, you become a customer. It works for me, I know that. So let's think about starting small and designing first for the mobile platform. And you want to keep the interaction in its simplest form, no complex pull-down, fly-out navigation, just very simple navigation. Make it easy to sort or filter content, and you've probably seen that before. If the desktop version is loaded with content, then take that content and put it into different categories. Perhaps you want, if you've gone on a department store site, you've seen categories based on gender, men, women. You've seen categories based on activities, sports, leisure, hardware, or kitchen supplies, that sort of thing. So think about categorizing the content. Only use enough design to brand the site. A really hot logo is really all you need. And think about it when you're looking at logos on things and you identify right away, oh, that's the Nike swoosh or Adidas or just those really simple logos that are a shape and don't have a company name associated with them whatsoever. It's just a graphic design with a shape to it. So brand the site in a smart way and something that can be used and viewed easily in all different sizes. You want to use larger fonts and really good typography. Think about your typeface that you select, particularly for the mobile device, because readability becomes an issue. If you're using typography that is a serif, for instance, with little tails on every one of those characters, they're not as easy to read, and the user's going to have to pinch zoom in, and nobody wants to land on a site on a mobile device and have to pinch zoom everything to be able to get to the content that they need. You want to add some summaries to big pieces of content, just a brief description. What can I expect to find on this page? Tabs and panels are really good ideas. We went over the accordion panel. Remember how easy it was to jam-pack a lot of content in a small space. No pop-ups, notification icons, and ads sparingly whenever possible. And you also want to minimize the number of pages. You can go crazy with a lot of pages on the desktop version, but you want to minimize the number of pages on the mobile, because again, it's a carrot to get people to go to the full-blown version of the web page. So tablets, you want to provide large touch areas for the navigation. On a mobile device, the navigation's usually with a thumb, so the touch areas again should be large enough where you can select an area easily. Use tabs and accordion panels for content, just like you would for the mobile. Use buttons or button-like designs for simple actions and main links. You don't have to write out, click here for this. You could have a picture of something, click here. But you do want to keep in mind the accessibility features. Optimized for Retina display. Now this is really interesting because this whole concept of Retina display, and you've heard about it with the new MacBook Pros, is that you can jam-pack a lot of pixels in a smaller area. The pictures are absolutely gorgeous, so you have more color information in a smaller area. And one of the neat ways that you can use your images is you want to get all the assets together, your photographs, logos, that sort of thing, but particularly the photographs. You can keep a large version for the desktop, but then you can add a little piece of code here and just create a class selector for your image. You can name it whatever you want, and the class selector can be applied to the image, so it will resize at 50% for your tablet display or your mobile device. It could resize at 50% of the original or 30%, whatever you choose. But you would put this selector in each media query. So remember we talked about media queries? That was a little bit of code that your CSS selectors for the mobile device would be called up if the display was below, say, 480 pixels, and if the display was larger than 480 pixels but less than 750, which would be a tablet size, then you could display a different size of that image. So if you don't have dimensions for the image, it will resize automatically, but you may want to control that, or you may want to deliver up a different version of that image based on the media query. And I also mentioned that too. So if, let's say, I just have so much fun with these drawing tools. So let's say you have an image here, and it's for a mountain biking site. So we've got some mountains, we've got the rider, got to put a seat on there. I won't draw the rider. And let's say we've got, oh, a nice sunset happening here. And we're going to put this as a very large image on the web page. And that will be viewable on a desktop device. It might be better to take this image and just select this part for the mobile. So visually, the user identifies back and forth between these images. Oh yeah, I was on the desktop, that's a zoom in of the bicycle on the mobile device. And so you are using one picture to create a different version for the display. And if you're creating a version for the tablet, you may want to get a different profile of that picture. And then you just take it into Photoshop and crop it and save as a different version. So I would have, for instance, the desktop version would be mountain bike.jpg. The tablet version would be mountain bike tb.jpg, and the mobile version mountain bike mobile.jpg. So I'm designating at the end of the file name so that when I look in my folder, these all will be right next to each other because they all start off MTN capital B. So you have 3 different versions, and so you may want to, on the tablet device, instead of using the class selector here, you can just insert in the div, in that particular div, or reference the smaller or zoomed in version of that picture. Okay, let's move on. So working up to a desktop, layouts can be more complex and still allow the user to scan the page. So you can put a lot more stuff in there, and that's where most of the ads reside, as we all know. Navigation can be horizontal, vertical, drop-down, fly-out menus. The sky's the limit. You can put whatever you want in there. And there's plenty of room for side content. So what are some examples of side content? Well, you can have social media feeds. You can have blog feeds going on. You can have advertisements. You could have specials of the day if it's an e-commerce site. So there's a lot of things that you can do with the side content. More clickable areas can be added, such as breadcrumb trails. Breadcrumb trails, we all know, are those little directional navigation tips. So let's say we have home, and then we click on the, let's use the sporting goods now. So we click on mountain bikes. And then in mountain bikes, is Rock Lobster still a company? They used to make a great mountain bike. I don't know if they're even around anymore. Home, mountain bikes, Rock Lobster, wheels. Whales. Oh, no, that wouldn't be wheels. That would be, let's do frames. Okay. So when somebody lands on a page, they know that they can click on any of these links to work their way back home. And that's pretty simple. You folks have done that in DM60. So, some things to think about with image quality. You want to use a limited number of images, particularly on the smaller display devices. Limit the image size in mobile design, as we talked about, and use multiple versions and file sizes, or allow images to hide in mobile versions. And so you can always program that into the CSS. Typography. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not counting characters per line. I like to use that typography website where I can change the font based on ems or percentage and change the line height and compare the typesetter.org, that's what it's called, and I can compare them side by side. But in the video, Stephen Hayes talks about 50 to 75 characters per line are ideal for readability, 35 to 50 characters per line on mobile devices, and then large blocks of text typically use 140% for line spacing. So if you set your font size to 100% of the display, or excuse me, of the browser display, then you want to bump that line spacing up to 140%. And for mobile, use extra line spacing, need more. Serif fonts are fine on large screens, but difficult to read on smaller screens, as I mentioned a couple of slides ago. So what he went over was essentially the workflow for designing, and I thought it was really interesting. Inventory your content. Start putting together what the navigation's going to be, the logo, your social media links, make a checklist for yourself what's going to be on that content. In construction they call it a punch list. So you want your punch list for the web project, navigation, what it will be comprised of, and you can use that from your flowchart that you made for the first part of this final project, the non-visual design. The social media links, if you choose to use those, date and location, introductory text, and what the secondary navigation is going to be. Design in text. Establish a hierarchy and structure, because when you design in text, it's so easy to revise it. If you start throwing your images in right away, then you're worried about how the text is going to wrap around the images, and if there's too much, resizing the images. So design everything out in text first. Test out the plain Jane structured content in HTML in the browser. So look at your layout, test it in the browser, resize the browser window, make sure everything is looking okay at what Stephen calls the breakpoints. The breakpoints are where the display visually breaks. And so I demonstrated that when we did the fluid grid layout. When you go to tablet design, what's breaking there? If we've got two side-by-side columns, they'll stay intact most likely for the tablet layout, but as soon as you go to mobile layout, those side-by-side columns, that div on the right should stack underneath the one on the left, and so you have a single column instead of two-column layout. The HTML design prototype. Create the CSS file and maybe use a little bit of JavaScript in the fluid grid layout. Remember, there's a JS file. You have a boilerplate.css file, and then you have a respond.min.js file, JavaScript file. Present prototype screenshots. This is something that you probably learned in DM1. He calls it part of the presentation psychology, presenting static impressions of the design across the different breakpoints. So static impressions would be a PDF file. What's it going to look like at the different sizes? And then you want to anticipate what's going to happen so the client isn't absolutely surprised or has this vision that the mobile version of their website is going to be a miniature version of the desktop. Present the prototype after the revisions. Once the revisions have been made, you can show the design in action. And then you'll want to provide documentation, including a style guide along with the production code. So, breakpoints. The key points to focus on are the first three that we talked about: mobile, tablet, and desktop. So the first breakpoint will most likely be at 480 pixels, but there's some older and low-resolution mobile phones that break at 320 pixels. You can design for that if you want, but you're probably safe staying with the first design should look good at less than 480 pixels. And then the next one is ideal for the large smartphones and the smaller tablets, like the Kindles, the iPads. So that's 768 pixels is the next breakpoint. And then anything above that would be a large tablet or a desktop screen. Now, I have seen numerous designs, and he mentions this is an option, having a different design for greater than 1024 pixels. The tech sites all have a different layout for something greater than 1024 pixels wide, because most people are buying screens that have higher resolution. So you might want to add that as a fourth breakpoint. But for the purposes of starting off with responsive design, I would just stick with the 3. Okay, so let's go to Dreamweaver here. Let me bring it back up. There we go. And you'll see the screen flicker a little bit. Okay, let me move my windows around. Okay, so this afternoon I mocked up this page. And this page has some different things going on. And let me go to live view so I can show you what's happening here. This is a fluid grid design. So here's the tablet version, the mobile version, the desktop version. And all it is text. There's a CSS menu here using an unordered list. And then there are 4 divs. One for the header, one first main content area, a second main content area, and a third main content area. I didn't put a footer in right now, but one of the trends I'm seeing is large footers at the bottom. There's a lot of stuff you can put in a footer, and I know you've seen this where there's been a lot of links down at the bottom for additional resources that have been categorized, which is kind of nice. If I have a little time here, I'll show you a site that I pulled up that's an example of that. So this is just text. There's no images. But you can see by getting the structure in place, you can start to visualize how this would be enhanced with images. And probably the longest time that I spent on this design was thinking about the typography. And notice how there's ample line spacing here. Nice white space between the heading and the body text. On the menu, we've got a little interaction where the menu items pop out as you mouse over them. And also, the current page would be a different color than the others. So whatever page you happen to be on, I've only made one page here, so I can't demonstrate that. And we get to the tablet. We still have the single column here. So the look and feel of this very, very simple site is recognizable and I think decently branded from page to page. It would benefit from some nice graphics, but for the most part, this is something that you could use as a foundation and build upon over time. Okay, so I'm on the desktop version right now, and I've got way too many CSS files. I shouldn't have this second boilerplate CSS up here, but we're going to ignore that for right now. So there's one file, one HTML file, one style sheet here, and then the boilerplate style inside, and I could easily take this flex style and move it in my styles folder. Update the links, sure, that sounds good. We'll update the links. But let me turn off live view, and you'll see that the nice typography goes away. Remember, with the Adobe Edge fonts, you have to have live view turned on to be able to preview it. Let's take a look at flexstyle.css. And I think what makes this page are these headers. And these headers contain an Adobe font family. And I simply went to Manage Fonts and selected a font from here. And by doing so, in my style sheet, let's go to my headers. Oh, I know where I put it. It made a separate style sheet here. ARG, web font. You feel like that when you're working on your final project? ARG, I can't believe I did that. Undo, undo, undo. So I could move this over to the style sheet. And I don't know why I ended up with two boilerplate files. That's kind of silly. Maybe because that one's empty? Okay. So you can see there's the font family. And it's looking up on the Adobe site for it. So let's go over how this is just the simple building of a responsive design. And before I do that, let me show you in the source code two things. So I've got my main content area. Let's go to split view. So there's the grid container. And then I have a header. There's the header. Main content area. The nav container. And the nav container is in this main content area. And as I scroll down, I'm going to go to live view here, or excuse me, design view so you can see. As I scroll down, here's another main content area, but I've named it main content 2. Scroll down a little bit more. Name this one main content 3. My workflow was to just get the main grid container that holds everything together and put a main content area in, and then I copy-pasted that into these subsequent ones and renamed them main content 2 and main content 3 so I could give them different styles. Once I had the styles set, then I went into the CSS file, and at every breakpoint, let's get down here to the mobile layout. So at every breakpoint, I took my main content selectors and my header selectors. I'll go down here. And my nav container, because I wanted to be able to tweak the nav container too. And so for the mobile, I went down and I copied it into the tablet. Okay, that has a minimum width of 481 pixels. So in Dreamweaver, in your CSS file, you're going to see your breakpoint in this rust color. So we talked about breakpoints. Here's the first breakpoint. So I copy-pasted. Here it is, main content 2, main content 3, my nav container selectors. Here's the next breakpoint. Remember, grid container was already there, and I did a couple other things like heading 1 and heading 2, but then I copy pasted it down here. So I had 2 breakpoints. First one for a tablet, second one for a desktop. So keep in mind, up here where this comment mobile layout, that's not a breakpoint because we're starting with the smaller one. But the first breakpoint will be in rust color and with a comment right above it. This is your tablet layout. So you can design your styles in mobile view. You can design your styles in desktop view or tablet view, and then copy paste them into each of those breakpoints, and then you can style them separately. So for instance, for let's say I want to change the color of my navigation bar for the mobile version, because watch what happens here. I go to live view, maybe not the color, but I want to change the alignment. So I want to change the properties of this so it lines up all the way across underneath my header instead of breaking into 2 lines. Does that make sense? Hopefully somebody's watching this and shaking their head going, oh yeah, that makes sense. And see on the tablet layout, item number 4 breaks here. So now item number 4 is all by itself on the second line. So I would want to redo the navigation here as well. So let me go to a I'm going to have to create a new site for the mobile. And I'm just going to do it on the desktop here. Let's create a folder. Okay, so I've got a new folder here called Mobile Design, and I'll go to the File pull-down menu, select New, Fluid Grid Layout. I've got my grid lines set at 6 for the mobile, set at 8 for the tablet, and set at 12 for the desktop. So I could have 2 columns if I wanted to, 3 each on the mobile. I could have 2 columns on the tablet, and I could have 3 columns on the desktop version. First, it wants me to save a style sheet. Week 13 demo. Okay, now I've got my first file, and I'll save my file. And we'll call that W13 demo. Dreamweaver wants to save the boilerplate.css and respondmin.js in my folder. Absolutely. Please save those files. And you'll see they're now in my Files panel. I can create a new folder called Styles, and I'll move boilerplate in there. Yes, let's update. And okay, File, Save All. Let's get started here. So I'm in split view right now. Let's call that week 13 demo. And I want to get rid of this first div in here and create my own. So this fluid div, I'll get rid of that and make sure I'm in the Insert panel, select Div, ID, and let's call this a header. Okay, I've got my header there. I'll come over to the code, put a return in so I can add my first div, And I'll call this main content. And I won't do the navigation right now in the interest of time. But you can see if I click on my fluid grid view, got my grid lines. Everything's resizing to my grid lines. Let me go back to mobile. And let's go to design view. Let's get rid of the grid lines too. And I'm going to come down here and select my header. And now I'll go to week 13 demo and select global because I want this to apply to all three device settings, mobile layout and desktop. And I'm going to choose a new selector. It'll be called header. And let me pull this out so you can see that a little bit more. And for my header, let's look at the styles here. So let's put 4 pixels of margin. Actually, let's do 4 pixels of margin. And then we'll do 8 pixels of padding on right and left. And 4 top and bottom. And then we'll do some reverse coloring here. So let's do a background color. And for the text, make it white. Let's choose a nice font. I think I'll go with, you know what? Let's just choose one from here. Bubbler. We'll use that. And remember, we're not going to see it unless we hit live view. So let me go to live view, see what it looks like. Oh, it's very small. In the interest of time, let's just go with ARG. Okay. And font size, let's bump this up to 3 Ms so you can see it. And then let's do one more thing. Oh, go to live view. Okay. Okay, let's see how that looks. Yeah, that's not bad. Okay, so notice that in the selectors we've got 4 headers. Why we have 4 headers, I'm not sure. So I'm going to click on the button Show Set so I can see we have global. Oh, there was another thing I wanted to do here. Header, let's go to Code Navigator. How did we end up with 4 headers? Okay. Come on, global. Where are you, header? Here we go. That's what I was looking for. I wanted some rounded corners. Okay, so let's put 6 pixels in. so we can round the corners of that header. Oh, I know what happened. Okay, let me go back to the source code. Everything is header 1. Okay, so for the header, let's go with main content here. So the style, global, main content. And what's it showing here? Okay, so for main content, we want to do the same thing and I think we did 4 pixels, not 44 pixels, just 4. Oh, but this time for the content area, I'm going to pull it away from the header. So let's put 20 pixels up on the top. And then for padding, we'll still have 8. There we go. And let's go down to the text. And we'll just make that Arial. And the font size will be 100%. Well, that's interesting. Okay, so for the main content, let's see what we've got going on here. Header. Background color. Okay, so that's for desktop. Let's put the header in here. I think I just boo-booed on that, but that's all right. Okay, font style, font size. All right. All right, so why is my content area picking up font size 100% for main content, font size 3M? Oh, because it's in the body. Oh, silly. Ah, that's why. So let me go there, and we'll get rid of that. Let's just dump that for right now. and go to the let's go to header, and that's where we'll set the type in the header. Font size, okay, in M3. Okay, wow, whew. Let me grab some content here. Put it in the div. There we go. Okay, now we're rolling. And I want to create a heading style. This is heading 1. So let's set a class for heading 1. So anything inside of, well, anything on the page that's heading 1, we'll do that. Oops. What happened to our tag selector? There we go. That will also be ARG. Did it pick it up? No, it didn't. Okay, what happened here? Font size 100%. The color. Let's do percentage. Actually, let's go with we're going to do M's. Let's make heading 1 2 M's. File, save all. Okay, and it didn't pick up the ARG. Come on, heading 1. Dang. Global. Huh. I've got to figure out where the selectors went to. Ah, there they are, down at the bottom. Okay, so let's make sure they're in all of the media queries. I'm going to put it back up here, put it under header. Now it should work. Yeah, there's heading 1. Now that's showing up. Okay. So if I go to tablet, it should resize appropriately. Go to desktop, resizes. Okay, good. Now I can go back to the source code and I can grab the main content here, copy paste it, and then we're going to call this main content 3, this one main content 2. It is not picking up. Oh, I know why. Okay, so now I'll go back to the CSS and I'm going to look for the main content area up here. Let's see where to go. Here we go. That gives us Arial. So let me start at the bottom here. Let's get rid of this because there's nothing in there. Same with this one. And same with this. That's useless. Okay, so this is main content 3. Okay. And we're going to do one for main content 2. Or actually, let's make this 2 and make this 3. And I can change the color on this one. I'll just do it by hand. And take these and copy them up into the next breakpoint. Let's get rid of those. And one more. So now I've got, wasn't sure what kind of color I was going to get there. Now I've got different colors, but they are in the 3 breaks, and I can style them differently. So I can go back to the CSS file, and let's say I want to add a different background color to this one. I can do that. And I can go to the sheet here, and only the screen with a minimum width of 481 pixels. I can go to main content 3 and change the background color on that one. But when I go to tablet, you'll see it, but you won't. Oh, minimum width. Okay, so if it drops below, there we go. If it goes down below to the mobile version, so the yellow background doesn't show. It has to be at least 481 pixels. So it's visible on the tablet, it's visible on the desktop, but not here. So for let's go to all the selectors. And choose, see, here's main content 3 down here. So let's go to this one, and let's change the background color. Come on back. Oh, there you are. Let's see what we get here. I think it was up here. And I just changed something that, okay, so let's do Control Z and get it out of there. Let's go to the mobile version, the main content, and we'll change the background color there. oh, that's the font color. I'm sorry, not the background color. Okay, so we'll change the font color on main content 1. We'll change the font color on main content 2. Made it red. And now we'll go to the tablet. And it changed the font color across here because remember it said that it was a minimum width. But if I go to the desktop version, here's my desktop version. And it stayed the same color down below. So I thought that was main content 3 there. Let's see what happens if we bump the font size up. Whoops. Okay. Well, rather than have you wait around while I try and troubleshoot what happened on this one, you get the idea. So in this design, we've got the same selectors in 3 different areas of the media query, reuse the content area, and then used an unordered list. And so this could contain pictures, this could contain flyouts if you wanted to, but there's a lot you can do on the desktop version. But if you start with the mobile version here with something really simple and then add to the tablet and the desktop version, it seems to be a little bit easier to manage. Okay, so that's all for now.